I'm Bhanu Balasubramnian. I'm from the Department of General Business and Finance in the College of Business Administration. I joined SAM this year in August 2021. I was born in India. I spent my first 39 years in India before I came to the United States 20 years ago. I came here on a sabbatical. I took leave from my bank job to do my MBA. I liked the university, the flexibility of working, the research. Particularly, I was a research assistant to a professor. So I went back to India, quit my bank job and started the PhD in finance, and then I started teaching. And my specialty, if you ask me, how banks can be disciplined by the market, particularly in a market economy like the United States. But even here, I have seen federal government have bailed out banks. And as I was defending my thesis in 2008, there was a wholesale bailout of the entire financial system. So it is always a troubling question, You cannot let the financial system collapse at the same time. If you bail out, then the managers misbehaving, what we call as moral hazard problem, increases. And as a result, each crisis is bigger in magnitude.
I'm Kristal Rychlik. I am originally from Austin, Texas. I got my Bachelor of Science from Texas A&M University in biomedical science. And I went on at A&M to also get my PhD in toxicology. And then after that, I was offered a postdoc position at Johns Hopkins University. And so I went up there for 4 years. I am a developmental toxicologist, so I like to study exposures during pregnancy and effects on the developing fetus. I've so far studied air pollutants and arsenic, which is a very common drinking water contaminant. And I've worked mostly in animal models doing that.
My name is Zeinab Shuker. I am at the Sociology Department, College of Social Sciences and Humanities. And I was born and raised in Baghdad, Iraq. So I am from the Middle East. I lived in Baghdad till I was about 16 years old. So I kind of lived through the different stages of conflict and war and many, many things like civil war and all of that. So it really had a lot of impact on who I am as a person and sort of things that I'm interested in and the kind of research that I do. And then I came to the United States afterwards, after I was, after I finished high school, and I've been living here since then. I arrived to the States not speaking English, so I had to learn it here. It was a very interesting cultural shock and just learning new things, but it was also a really fun, enjoyable place to be in. I finished my BA and MA in sociology at the University of Memphis. And then I went and I got my PhD from the University of California, Riverside in sociology and political economy. And I graduated in June this year. So I just graduated with my PhD. And, I'm very lucky to get the opportunity to work at Sam Houston as a tenure track faculty in sociology and do what I love and what I've been studying for all these years.
There are big problems we have in the world, right? So, for example, one was this financial system, particularly why should we bail out? And even if it is not a bank, like in United States, they bailed out a hedge fund company called Long-Term Capital Management. They did not exactly bail out, but at least the federal government, the New York Federal Reserve, at least brokered the bailout. It also bugs me, in a well-educated and well-connected, rich country like United States, why people are not really financially literate. Why people make a lot of financial mistakes. So it is again, these are all larger societal problems And if we can find some solution through research, it would be, even if we move by 2 inches, I think it is progress. And the focus of my research has been in that direction.
I didn't really discover research until after undergrad. I thought I wanted to go to vet school, and so I had applied, and then senior year came around and I hadn't gotten in my first round of applying. Came time to apply again, and I just really was not feeling the motivation to do it. So I graduated and I was just working still in College Station, and I met someone who knew someone who was a professor and was in toxicology, and I just, he offered if I wanted to shadow in the lab. So I came in and I just fell in love with toxicology. It's such an interdisciplinary field, and we get to work with chemists, people from public health, and it really has a direct impact on human health. And so I just really loved that idea that, what I do every day could be not the same every day. I don't come to work and do the same thing every day, which I like, and has a direct relevance for public health.
So I think I always wanted to be a professor, like as a child. I know how people, when they're young, it's like, oh, I want to be an astronaut or something. And for me, it's just like, I wanted, from a young age, I was like, I want to be a historian. And so I remember I used to, obviously living in the land where some of the oldest civilizations ever existed, I was very fascinated and motivated by that. And it just had it resonated with me from a very young age. So I remember in our house, I would go outside and I dig in the garden trying to find lost treasures and stuff like that from old civilizations. So I've been a nerd all my life. I really enjoy, I wanted to teach history, and I wanted to teach and become a professor. And that was sort of the goal from the beginning. And I think that when I get to college, the transition towards sociology was really taking an intro to sociology class. My professor at Memphis, she's a fascinating teacher. She's passionate and she loves her work, and she's really enjoys what she's talking about. And I found that kind of living in a place where there was a lot of political conflict and there's a lot of economic conflict, and, being an immigrant, being a refugee. So there's all these sociological questions that I experienced on a personal level, but I didn't necessarily have answers for why they happen and how they happen, and sort of the larger implications of these different events that are happening outside me that I don't have control over, but they impact my life. And so I was experiencing these things on a personal level, but I just didn't have the tools to understand them academically. And I found that sociology was a tool to allow me to do that. And it was intro to sociology class. And so my love for history remained, but then I found a way to kind of put these two things together. So I became a historical sociologist where, I write research and examine work from a theoretical perspective, but also very much interested in sort of the historical development of concepts and political structures and political institutions and economic institutions. So kind of integrated both of my love for history that I always had because of, my connection to the land and my connection to my people, with sort of my interest and my joy and my interest in sociology, which allowed me really in the beginning to start to understand my own reality. And sort of with each passing day, with each passing acquiring of more knowledge of sociology and eventually teaching students sociology, that knowledge and that decision is even more clarified for me. I made the correct choice and correct decisions, because Iraq and the Middle East is constantly changing and evolving, and we need more research and we need more people who are doing sociological work on the region, not just political economy, not just political science, not just economic work, not just policy work, but really sociological, macro theoretical understanding of the region, which is, there's not many. And so both, it was important for me on a personal level, but I also think it's a crucial thing to develop to understand the region better and to understand what's going on there. And so, yeah, that's how sort of I got into it and remained interested in it years later.
So the current research project, if you ask me, I continue to do what is called this market discipline of banks, how we can make the market discipline banks, just like many other companies. We need to get more information, right? Just like currently we have this issue of Facebook putting their own interest of their profits over the society, right? Whether it is for democracy or children's health, mental health, or it's a debate. It will be a constant debate in the world. I continue to examine the market discipline issues. And I also started looking at climate risk issues because the climate risk is becoming more and more non-insurable. The insurance premium, particularly in the coastal areas, have gone tremendously. The home insurance, flood insurance is not even available unless it has some federal assistance. So climate risk is another thing that I'm interested in. And of course, I continue to examine the financial literacy issues, particularly from the psychological side. What is the resistance? Why people do not get to know about sound financial decision making in their lives? When people think they know, when they do not know, they make more mistakes. It's called Dunning-Kruger effect. And that issue has been examined in educational psychology much more widely. Because if a student thinks, if a learner thinks he knows, they will not learn. But if I know that I do not know, then the probability of my understanding the issues is much better. So the climate risk, this financial literacy issues, and market discipline of banks. These are the three major issues that I currently examine.
I'm still really interested in developmental toxicology. That's, what research I want to do. I'm getting really interested in the placenta itself and how these environmental exposures change the way that the placenta cells form and interact with each other and help to influence the immune system of the developing fetus, because there's immune cells that are in the placenta during development. And so I'm really curious, what cells are there? What are they doing? How are they impacted by these environmental contaminants? So that's where I would like to go with my future research.
I'm very much interested in the MENA region and Iraq specifically. I study political economy of Iraq and the MENA region. So MENA is like the North Africa, Middle East region. And so I study political institutions. I study things like what we call them hybrid regimes. These are regimes that are neither democratic nor autocratic. So not like, they have like institutions and features that are both democratic and undemocratic at the same time. So I'm very much interested in how these regimes are formed, the boundaries, how do we define these regimes, what kind of social conditions exist in them, what kind of economic systems, how people negotiate power. I am also very much interested in the question of oil dependency. So we call them rentier economies. These are countries that their main source of income and revenues come from natural resources. And so whether it's oil or gas or like diamonds or something like that. So these are not like productive in the sense of like a capitalist economy, but like just depending on natural resources. So these countries tend to produce their own unique political structures and their very unique social contract between citizen and elites, and their unique legitimacy system and very unique interactions and civil society and all of that. And so Iraq is both hegemonic and rentier. And so I'm very much interested in the back and forth between those, like these kind of interactions between these two like political and economic systems in the country. But I understand them I understand it from theoretical perspective. So I consider myself a social theorist. So I develop concepts and theories around these things. And then, so it's applicable outside of Iraq and the MENA region. It applies to other rentier economies that exist everywhere in other many regions. And it allows us to understand other hybrid regimes that also exist in many places. Some of them exist in Europe, some of them exist in Africa, and so on. So I developed theories around them, but with focus on Iraq and the MENA region specifically. Currently, I'm very much interested in, again, these conversations, but also looking at climate change and how climate change is really going to impact the region and Iraq very drastically. We already can see the impact on water access and water resources. The country is expected to really face very high increase in temperature, significantly more than many other places globally. So that will impact patterns of migration, patterns of food access, and all of that might increase conflict. And it also will change the nature of the energy sector. So with the increase in temperatures and changes in the climate, there are going to be more shift toward cleaner energy and solar systems and all of that, and a shift away from oil. And when you have a country that their whole economy is just depending on oil, what would that mean for that country when the main source of revenue start disappearing? And so that will have a lot of implication on sort of stability and migration and conflict. That is not only just country specific, but it's also gonna bleed to the region and globally as well. And so I'm very much interested in these questions and sort of interested in the question of climate right now.
If we can solve some of the societal problems, that would be my contribution. Generally, if it takes time from research findings to actual implementation, and it's an ongoing process. It's the changes have to be incremental. It cannot be really drastic. It has to be incremental. So I just have to be patient and continue to do my research. So try to find better answers, refine the answers, and make it more relevant as time changes.
My ultimate goal is to protect mothers and babies. I really want to improve the health of pregnancies, particularly in the United States, but around the world, and the health of our babies.
So I am very much interested in the question of public sociology. I want, and I've been doing that for the past couple of years, where, for us in sociology, sort of a lot of times the goal is to write and publish in these academic journals and these top ranked journals. And a lot of time the conversation kind of remain within the walls and the boundaries of academia, and we just speak to each other, which is important because it allows us to develop research and build on each other's ideas and all of that. But I also want to as well engage in conversations that are related to policy, that are related to lawmaking, that are, creating research and creating work that can speak to the people, that can be accessible by the people. And so like I said, I write in Arabic and I write in English. So it's really important to me to write in both languages and to speak to the people back home and sort of create that bridge between academia and public sociology, specifically in terms of creating research and showing result and showing suggestions and policy recommendations that are accessible to policymakers, but also to the population, but also creating that bridge between those the Arab speaking world and our academic space here in the United States. Like I mentioned, a lot of the research that is done on Iraq and being done right now is kind of within the boundaries of policymakers and political scientists and economists. I think sociologists are not engaging in the conversation as much, and especially even when they are engaging in these conversations, they tend to be very micro sociology, so kind of focusing on just alliances and interactions within the different political groups competing in the country and all of that. But there is really very limited research on larger social structures, larger social relationships, larger questions of institutions from a sociological perspective. So I think that's missing, and I think it's necessary. That's been my goal, really, to kind of reincorporate sociology in the study of Iraq and to create a bridge between sort of high-end academic writing that's like not super accessible to the people, and between research that people can read and negotiate and understand their own reality. Just like I lived in the country and lived there, and I didn't have the tools to understand what's going on, and it would have been important to have these tools, and I didn't really have these tools till I got here and I started like studying and writing myself. I want to like provide these tools for others who don't have the same space to get a PhD in sociology to understand what's up. So that's the goal.
You know, finance has become more interdisciplinary now. One is how the psychology of financial decision making, and technology is playing a huge role in financial services. So I would love to work with psychologists as well as technical people, computer science people on both sides, on both ends. One, how to use technology to make the product more accessible. It is surprising to note that 25% of the US population do not have proper bank accounts. They go to money changers and pay much more for their services than they should. So if they live in inaccessible areas, can technology give them a solution? You know, it is relevant. It is as relevant in United States as it is in Africa. We see tremendous progress in Kenya, where they used mobile technology to give access to people to have bank accounts and for mobile payments. So financial inclusion, we call that financial inclusion. It is a very large problem for the world. So that is one thing. Psychology, how we can make people become more aware of what is proper financial decision making. If we just make people aware, I think people will make a very good financial decision. But how to make them aware is the challenge.
You know, keep up the good work. It's definitely hard being a new faculty and, you know, doing a lot of things for the first time and learning new things. So those of you who have reached out and answered my questions, even though they might be silly, thank you so much. And thank you for being willing to, you know, talk it out with me and help me kind of troubleshoot, because it's all very new.
I would like to say that I'm really happy to be here, really happy to have these colleagues and to be in a space with everyone. It's a wonderful research space. And I'm really lucky that I have the support from my colleagues who are in the sociology department, who are, you know, very supportive, very encouraging, really allowing me to do my work and engage in these conversations and write in multiple languages and do all of that. And they've been really supportive, and I appreciate that. But I also love to connect to other faculty across campus and meet those who I haven't met yet. And whether it's about research projects and developing research and developing co-authorship work and papers and all of that. But also just to kind of connect, you know, on a human level and, you know, just meet each other and just chat and, you know, create a system and a network of like support and allyship and sort of like a connection and friendship with people. Sometimes academia tend to be lonely and tend to be one of these spaces where you kind of like sitting and writing and just doing your work and, you know, you just do it on your own. And I think that building a community is an important part of who I am as a person. And I would love to be sort of a contributing part of the community that already exists here on campus and, you know, just be part of that conversation. So I'm already very lucky and very happy to be here. And I look forward to continuing to like interact with different faculty and different, you know, in different spaces here on campus.